So I promised some friends that I'd make a video about my challah baking, and perhaps also some future videos about baking other things, different types of breads, or cakes or pies or other things that we might do here in the house. But today we're going to concentrate on the challah. And in case there's anybody watching that doesn't know what challah is, of course, it's the special bread that's used by Jews on the Sabbath, on Shabbat. It's based on a European celebration bread, which is a braided bread, and it's also I guess you call it a cousin of the brioche, which is a sweet egg bread that's a famous French bread. So it's very similar to that as well. And the challah that I'm going to make here is a fairly sweet challah, and uses eggs, of course, not too many eggs. I don't put a lot of eggs in my challah. But I do want to say that it's based on a recipe that I originally read in the cookbook, A Treasury of Jewish Holiday Baking by Marcy Goldman, which is on the shelf behind me. And but I've adapted it in a number of ways, which we're going to explain in just a minute. A couple of quick notes. I use a bread machine for my challah dough. I make the dough in the bread machine, and then I take it out and shape it and everything else after that. It's really the only dough that I make in a bread machine because it's just really easy to do. But when I do real breads, or I should say real breads, but when I do breads like a French bread or something like that, I do it in, I use a mixer or do it by hand, the old-fashioned way. So we're gonna get started right from the start. And the first thing I do is I weigh my ingredients. And I weigh my ingredients because that way I have a uniform amount of ingredients for everything across the board. There's no difference, because I could take a cup of flour today and it's, you know, if I pack it into that cup, I have a lot of flour, but I can take a cup of flour and have it sifted, and then I have a different amount of flour in that cup. So it's really important to weigh the ingredients, because a pound of flour is always a pound of flour, no matter how pressed it is into that cup. So I'm going to bring up my other camera so we can see what I'm doing right here. Good. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get my flours. I use two kinds of flour here. We use a bread flour. I always use King Arthur flour, but you can use any kind of flour. I find King Arthur is a better brand of flour. I use a bread flour. Bread flour is, as you can see here, it says right on the package, it's 12.7% protein content, whereas a all-purpose flour is a little bit lower percentage. It's about 11%. And the higher the protein content in the flour, the more gluten that's going to be formed, and the more rise and the more crumb, that's the holes and everything that's inside the bread, the more you're going to get from that with the higher protein content. I also use, I have in this container here, I use this is a King Arthur white whole wheat flour, and I use part of that as well. Now I'm going to mention throughout the ingredients here some information that that's called baker's percentages. I hope to do, I'll do a video after this one that explains baker's percentage, but just suffice to say that baker's percentage allows people to scale up or down their recipes really simply. So our recipe begins with the bread flour. We're going to use 515 grams of bread flour, and so I have my little scale here, which I guess we have to tilt my camera to really see it. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to put 515 grams in here quickly, and like I said, with the baker's percentage, flour is always going to be 100% of the recipe. So, and all of the other ingredients are going to be a ratio, or it's going to be a percentage of the next to the amount of flour. So while my flour is 100%, my water, in this case, is going to be 328 grams, and that comes out to 41% of the amount of flour. So my water is 41%. The salt is 10 grams, which is 1.25%, etc. So it makes it easy to understand how to do the recipe if I want to make it smaller or bigger. So there's 515 grams. I'm going to put in 285 grams of my white whole wheat flour. That. Now measuring it into a bowl, because I'm going to put it aside, the dry ingredients are going to go on the top of my bread machine pan when we're ready to do this. So it's very easy to put it in a bowl like this. So my dry ingredients, of course, are the same ingredients that go into any kind of bread. It's flour, salt, and yeast. So my salt here is about 10 grams. So we will put in 10 grams, 6, 9, 10 grams of salt. I use kosher salt, but you can use any salt really for baking like this. I'd perhaps stay away from iodized salt. But you could use kosher salt if you want to grind salt from a grinder or anything like that. That would be fine too. I'm going to use 15 grams of my yeast, which is back here. And I use exclusively what we call instant yeast. Instant yeast is a slightly different species of the yeast. The yeast is an actual organism, and it's a little slightly different. And instant yeast will work regardless of the temperature of the water. So generally, water needs to be warm in order for the yeast to work. Instant yeast will work with cold water as well. I'm going to use 15 grams of my instant yeast, and of course, I'll put all the recipe and the ingredients in the section below, in the comment section below. So, all right, that's my yeast is 15 grams. So that's all of my dry ingredients. And what I do, it's not necessary, but what I do is I like to sift this all together, mix this all together if we can. So I'll take a spoon here and I'll just give it a little stir. It's not really that important because when it goes into the machine, it's going to mix up together pretty well. But then I'm going to put that aside over here for now because we're going to concentrate on our wet ingredients. So now I like to take this large measuring cup here, and I'm going to measure all of my ingredients in here. I'm going to weigh them each in turn and put them in here. So the first thing I'm going to work with is my eggs. Now I use 2 eggs and an egg yolk. Now obviously you can't really weigh them. And when you're scaling recipes, it's really hard to work with eggs. And when I do my video about baker's percentage, assuming I get to it, I'll explain how to do that. But for our purpose here, we're going to just use 2 eggs and an egg yolk. So for the first part, we're going to crack my eggs into here. And I have it on the scale, but it really doesn't matter because we're not weighing these. 2 eggs. Now I'm going to go pause my video for a moment while I go and get my egg yolk cracked. Okay, now here's my egg yolk. Down in. Okay, and I'm going to just take a little whisk, my little mini whisk. I love this this little tool, and I'm going to whisk up my eggs. Be perfect. Eggs in there. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients. So first is oil. I use olive oil. I use extra virgin olive oil. It adds, I think, to the flavor of the challah. You can use canola oil. You can use vegetable oil, any kind of oil you want. And we use 70 grams of this. So we're going to pour in 70 grams of oil. It may seem like a lot, but this is a sizable recipe. So it needs that much. 70, look at that, perfect. Although you can't see the number on the scale. Let's see if I can zoom in there. Look at that, perfect, right on the money. Okay, so I'm going to mix this up as well. Now this I try to mix in nicely to get the oil mixed together. I'm not going to emulsify it to make a mayonnaise, but I really want to get them mixed up together. All right, so the next thing I need to put in is my honey, and that's 75 grams of honey. Oops. And I think this is a brand new container, so we're going to have to open it up. There we go. 75 grams. I'm going to tear my scale, and I will then just pour in 75 grams. Now, this is a bit of a bone of contention for my family that I don't actually do the same recipe every single time, and that's probably because although I come close, this time we got 77 grams. 2 grams extra of honey. I don't really watch the honey, so a little extra honey can never hurt. I mean, I've gone up as high as 80 grams of honey in the past, not on purpose again, but just by accident. And get a good mix in. Okay, the last ingredient is not a wet ingredient actually. It's a dry ingredient. It's actually sugar, which I have to take out of the cabinet. I forgot to take it down. So we're going to take sugar here. Now, I always like to mix my sugar into the wet ingredients, and that's, in my mind, I don't know for sure, but I think it's because, and I find a lot of recipes that do that, it's because it gets the sugar dissolved better when it's in the wet ingredients than when it's in the dry ingredients. So I'm going to put in 80 grams of sugar, so I'm going to tear my scale. Put in 80, oops, now that's a lot more. So that I'm going to have to try to scoop some out, which I can try to do. I'm going to put it over here. Okay, so we have our sugar in there. Cabinet, and then I will mix in my sugar as well. Okay, so now we have this. So while I move some of this stuff away, I want to say that challah, as a word, for those that don't know, it's actually a biblical term. It comes from the Bible, and it refers to, in general, it refers to any kind of a bread or a cake. However, there's a commandment in the Torah, in the Bible, about sacrifices that use breads and flours, and it talks about taking challah, and so that has been our tradition has taken that to mean that when we make a batch of dough, that we take off a small piece of it as an offering. Generally, it gets burned in the oven, and that's called taking challah. So the challah, the word challah, really refers to that piece of burnt offering that's there. I don't do that with my challahs because the tradition is to do that when you have a very large batch of dough. I'm making a fairly small batch. I'll be making four challahs, 4 little challahs, because that's what my family needs. Now, I have here my water. So I pre-measured it. It's 328 grams of room temperature water. It doesn't need to be warm because, like I said earlier, the yeast that we use will work no matter what temperature the water is. So we're going to take one of these handy dandy little nylon spatulas. I'm going to pour the egg mixture into my water. This is what makes challah good. Now, some people make an eggless challah, called water challah. It's pretty much the same recipe, just without the eggs. But to me, that's kind of not worth it. Although I know I have friends who are watching this are probably cursing my name for saying that. But anyway, okay, so now we have all of our wet ingredients in there. So now we're just going to pour in our dry ingredients into the pan here. Now I know some people's bread machines may have certain ways it says that you have to put the yeast in first, you have to put this in first. It doesn't matter. You can put any ingredient in any order in your bread machine and it'll still work fine. And here we go. So I'm going to get all of that flour in there. Now I'm going to put it in my machine on the dough setting, and make sure for sure that you put it on the dough setting, because if you put it on the baking setting, you'll be getting a baked challah in here and it won't be shaped properly. And number 8 on my machine is the dough setting. I'm going to push it to turn it on, and it takes an hour and a half. It takes 90 minutes. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then in 90 minutes I will come and get the dough and get it ready to shape, and we'll see how to shape, how to braid, and finish off the challah at that time. Well, it's 90 minutes later, and our dough is done. And I'm going to share that, share the other camera so we can see. There we go. Okay, so there we are. So here's our dough coming out of the bread machine. It's nice and risen. And I'm just going to put it in a bowl for the moment. So I'm just going to take the paper towel on the bottom because it gets a little dirty sometimes. I'm just going to drop it right into this bowl. There we go. Okay. Actually, I'm going to put it on the board first. And there's a little more dough in here. Scrape some of that out. Okay. So there we go. Okay. Now, I could now cut this into pieces and then do the shaping. But what I like to do is I like to weigh everything because I'm somewhat precise about the way I do this. I want my challahs to all be about the same size. So first thing I'm going to need to know is how much does this mass of dough weigh? So I'm going to put it in the bowl here using my bench scraper, which is for bakers. This is like a really important piece of equipment. It helps you get dough off the counter. It helps you cut dough. Lots of things you can do with it. And of course, I made a mistake because I got to weigh my bowl first so I can get the weight of the dough. Put that on the scale. And now it's at 0. Go up. Okay. So I have 1,506 grams. And I'm going to be making this into 4 challahs, as I said before. So each challah is 3 strands, so that's 12 pieces. Comes out to about 125 grams per strand, per piece of challah. So now I can take this back out again, and I can, my top is pretty clean as it is, so I'm going to just, I'll cut off pieces to get 125 grams, 126. It's pretty close. We'll take it. That was 140, a little bit high. Go there, 16. So I try to get it 125. There we go. I try to get them into 125 gram pieces. I'll then take each piece, I'll make it into a ball, and then I'll just put it on the board to rest for now while I do the rest of them. So I'm making a nice round ball there. The way I do that is I'll take the dough like this. I kind of like stretch it out like this, make a nice smooth surface, bring it around the bottom, kind of tuck it in on the bottom, pinch the bottom together, and as I pinch the bottom together, you see the top forms that nice kind of smooth surface. So we're going to pause the video while I go and shape the rest of them into balls. Okay, so now I have my dough. As I can pan over here, you'll see I have them in nice little balls, round balls. I have 3 of them on the board right here. You notice I don't really put any flour on the board itself. There's a little remnant here. I'm going to scrape some of that away. I don't want to add any flour into the dough. The dough is exactly the amount of flour that I want in it. So, so I'm going to leave it as close to it as possible. If the dough's a little sticky, as mine was actually a little sticky because it's a humid day, I just basically put my hands in the flour, get a little flour on my hands as I work with the dough, and that's all you really need to do. Now I'm going to roll them out. So basically I just roll out logs like this. And these are 4 not so huge loaves, so I'm not going to go that big. Just do that. Worry about that. I'll do 2 more of them. Now I'm going to be braiding with 3 strands. Okay. Maybe sometime I'll be able to do another video where I can show lots of different braiding techniques with different numbers of strands. But for now, we're just going to stick with the traditional 3. Now you could also, if you really wanted to, you could go like this to roll it out. I like to use the board this. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this towel, this dish towel, actually. This one's a little better. This dish towel is a little bit damp. And we're going to put it out underneath the board. Like that. And that's going to stop the board from slipping as it was doing just now. So here we got 3 approximately the same size strands. I'm going to braid them together. Pinch them at the top, like that. Nicely together. We take our leftmost strand, throw it over the top, rightmost strand, put it over the top. I like to make sure that the top here where it's together is nice and neat, and just keep following the same thing. Right over, left over, right over, left over, right over. Okay, and there we have our base of challah braid. Now I want to leave this to rise, so I'm going to put it on. I have a prepared pan here with this silicone baking mat. So I'm going to put my challah right there, and then I can move on to another one. So again, we're going to roll out the strands about the same size. Now this one's a bit sticky, so we can just add a tiny bit of flour here. 2, about right. 3. Okay, I'm going to pinch the tops together. Left over, right over. Left over, right over, left over, right over, left over. Just like that. And that's the finished product. Now, you notice it's not very perfect looking. I don't necessarily work hard to make my challahs beautifully perfect. I like them to be, you know, they're braided properly, but they're not the smoothest it can be. And I like that sort of imperfection in it. I could do it if I use my hands more than the board, because my board is not perfectly flat. I'd get a much smoother look. Or if I had a board that was like a piece of granite or a piece of marble or something, I'd be able to roll it much smoother. So that's our braid. I'm going to braid the 2 others off camera, and we'll leave them to rise. They're going to rise probably for about, it's pretty warm today, so it's going to take about 30 to 40 minutes to rise up. If I wanted to, I could shorten that amount of time. I could turn on my oven to about 200. When it got to temperature, I would turn it off, open the door. I could put the pan inside the oven and then leave the door cracked open a little bit. And then it would probably take about 20 minutes for the dough to rise. And then we would be ready to bake it at that point. You could also put an egg wash on top of it when it's ready to bake. I'm not going to bother doing that today, but you certainly could do that. You could top it with poppy seeds or sesame seeds or anything that you might like as well. We're going to leave them plain because that's the way my kids like them. I'll come back when everything is done. So, okay, the chalot are out of the oven. Of course, I forgot to tell you the most important part, of course, is that they were baked at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes. So a couple of things you'll see that may look a little different from chalot that you might see in the store, in a more professionally baked. They don't have, each of the strands aren't as sort of separate or distinct as you might see on other chalot. And that's actually because there was a little bit too much moisture in these chalot. So today's a very humid day. It's been raining all day long. There's a storm going on right now. And the extra moisture in the air got into my dough, and it kind of did this. So if you have, and I said that before when I said that the dough is somewhat sticky. So if you have that, what I could have done is I could have perhaps rolled the strands once I formed them, rolled them in some flour, and the flour coating might have prevented them from kind of melding together like this. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're all going to taste the same. Now, of course, I didn't put the egg wash, so it's not as glossy on the outside. But again, I'm making this for just me and my family. And if I were making it for company or for something big like that, I probably would have done it a little bit better up like that. When I talked about baker's percentage at the beginning, I told you that the water in here was 328 grams, is 41%. And so what we call that is a hydration of about 41%. Plus, there's a little extra liquid that comes from the eggs as well, and from the oil too, of course. So what this is telling me here is that I need, in a humid situation like this, I need to drop that hydration down a little bit, probably to about, I would say maybe about 36 or 38%, to pull down the moisture a little bit, and I would have avoided this. However, it's going to taste just as good anyway. So that's the secret to my chalot. Like, you know, they come out, they're about the same size every week, because I weigh everything, and I try to do it as precise as possible. So I'm going to take these in the other room. I'm going to cover them with a towel, kitchen towel, and let them cool overnight. And then in the morning we can wrap them up or whatever we want. Or tomorrow is Friday, so we'll be using them for this Shabbat. Anyway, there's no need to wrap them up too much. So so that's it for my challah video. I'm going to I have already started to record video for the baker's percentage, which I think is really important. Anybody that wants to learn how to bake, it's really important to learn baker's percentage. I'm going to look for some nice thick ropes that I can use to demonstrate some braiding techniques. So we can do braiding, a braiding one. And I think my next bread baking video is going to be my pizza dough. We make pizza every week here in the house, and it comes out tremendously amazing, to borrow some superlatives from some other person who shall not be named. That one is a more traditional dough. I'll do it in a mixer, and it is going to be a much more hydrated dough as well. So that will be for the next time. I hope you enjoyed my video presentation of my challah baking. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. And I hope people actually start watching these, because people watch, I'll make more. So thanks very much, and have a great night.